Okay. So, for last week, we started talking about the asteroids in astrology and how to kind of utilize them. I apologize if my screen starts shaking or if you start hearing barking in the background. My dog has found his voice and he's just very much using it every chance he gets now. And so, then he's kind of under my computer desk. But so we started talking about the asteroids in astrology. I think we got through Pallas last time, if I'm not mistaken. We didn't get to Vesta at all. And I know that we did Juno, Pallas, and we had questions about Chiron. We'll get through all of those today, as well as talking about like how to apply those in chart readings as well. Juno in particular mostly is more important when you're talking about partnerships and compatibility and synastry and all of that. Um, all the other ones I think can be used more on an individual level, like just for, not to say Juno isn't important in an individual sense, but I think her appropriate like use is more useful in synastry, since she has to do with partnerships in general, whether it be like business partnerships or romantic partnerships. It's just like one-on-one relationships. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so I've started to update everything. So we talked about, and we did talk about series, correct? We did, because I remember that. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about Palace, and so we're going to start out today talking about Vesta. So Vesta is going to be how you service the world, but it can also be more so about sexual empowerment as well. At least that's how I personally take it. I think, but you can also take that more so as, or you can adapt that into like how your own kind of like sacred flame or creativity is used to service the world, to bring light to the world. Um, but Vesta, because Vesta does have a bit to do, or no, not a bit, a lot to do with sex work. But there's so much more that we can take from that than just the sex work part. The sex work part of Vesta is actually more so rooted in the temple of Vesta. So it would be Hestia in Greek mythology. I'm like, I always get those two mixed up with with the names, but and so it would be the goddess of the hearth and sacred flame. So of course she had virgins in that temple that were tasked with the upkeep of the temple, but also part of a bestial virgin's duties was to perform like the sacred sex work. Um, and so part of what we'll see coming up with Vesta is like the idea of a virgin. And in that time, virgin wasn't meant to talk about somebody that had not had sex yet. It was talking about more so someone that just belonged to themselves. So yes, the act of sex was being performed. However, these workers were not, or I guess, yeah, we can call them workers since we're in 2023. They were not married. They didn't have children. If they did have children, the child was, very much, valued, but that was not the goal at all. And so, but it was more so, I can't even find another phrase for it other than it's sex work for more of a higher, more religious purpose of connecting masculine, feminine, and connecting to the divine. Um, which is interesting because we do see kind of like that concept of tantra or tantric sex coming up when we're talking about Vesta, but also a little bit when we're talking about Juno as well, which I don't think I brought up last time. If I did, I apologize for repeating it. But that is something that we can also kind of take from both of those asteroids. So with Vesta, the two signs that lend their energy to Vesta are going to be Virgo and Scorpio. So Virgo is going to be like actual workers. It can be people who are of service to others. It can have definitely I know that Virgo as a sign in like when we're talking about like a star sign in relation to people, we often think about, you know, being a perfectionist or really being a bit more anal about the small details of things, being more grounded, being more prepared for things. And this is all true. I think that definitely when we were talking about like how the temple was kept up, I think that's something that obviously can be related back to the sign of Virgo. Um, like essential workers, people in customer care, customer service are all going to be very Vesta centered people. Um, and so, because they're bringing something to someone else for some sort of service. And so, um, the Scorpio aspect is more the sexual side of things, but it's also more the introspection or the more occult side of that work. We have a question. Um, it's a study guide. It should be. I like this particular handout, I have not sent back to Alex, you know, with it being updated, because I procrastinated. And so I apologize. But I will be sending it to her for sure after class, or possibly before class is over. Because we are wrapping up on this course in general. And so this, if you're asking about specifically this handout, then I'll have that to her either by the end of class or right after the end of class. And there should be a just like a curriculum outline. I don't know if that's also maybe what you're asking about, but that should be on the website as well. Um, so some of the things that gotcha. So, Natalia, yeah, so this whole course has been about learning about your natal chart. And so if you haven't been here since the beginning, we will be starting the course over at some undisclosed time. We haven't finished this actual course all the way yet, but at some time it will be repeated. And so if you don't want to wait that long, we have all the recordings of the class either up on YouTube or through Facebook Live. Gotcha. Yeah, so all the recordings of the classes are either on YouTube already. Alex has let me know that all of it should be up to date. And then the missing classes that are not on YouTube should be on Facebook Live. No problem. Um, and so, but I always, you know, encourage people if even if you're like very much a beginner, just kind of sitting and listening to astrology, even if you don't understand everything that's being said, is one of the best ways to learn about astrology, other than just following the moon, and looking at how it affects your everyday life and how, you know, running correspondences between everything. Because eventually it starts to make sense. Eventually it starts to click. It's like, you know, when you're learning a whole different language, which I think astrology definitely is it's a whole like art, science, and its whole language as well. Um, but so for Vesta, we can see quite a few correspondences. We see people that are I guess more labeled as like I don't, whether it's negative or positive, people that are a bit more free with their sexuality um, are going to be people that usually have a very strong Vesta influence in their chart. Um, because it's not Vesta is more very much more when it comes to sex, it's more about this is sex is its own thing, but I am my own person. And yes, I come together with another person for that moment, but I do not, it's not like I'm bonded to that person for for life or something like that. It's more so we had that moment, it served a purpose, and now it's done. Okay. And so we have things like casual sex. So like people, I guess for men that would be labeled as like players, those people, like those men usually have like a very strong Vesta influence. Women that, again, I really hate to like even make this comment, but I'm like, because it is more, because there's a double standard for sure about women being free with their sexuality. So in society, women that are dubbed as being like whores or just not being ladylike would probably also I wouldn't be surprised to find that they also have a very strong Vesta influence in their chart. Even though none of that is true, it's the general idea of the thing. Sexual fears and inadequacies, as well as like trauma. So like um, a man being impotent, or just having kind of general awkwardness around sex, or actually having fears around sex because of trauma can also be linked back to Vesta, and because Scorpio lends its energy to Vesta as well. So fears of intimacy, commitment issues, avoidance of marriage and children. I had mentioned before that the actual bestial virgins never got married. And if they did have children, the children were taken care of for sure, but they were not brought into the actual like temple. The bestial virgins were actually moved out if they had children, moved out of the temple, and they were still very much honored as women, because there weren't men that were bestial virgins, there were only women. And so they were moved out of the temple and definitely honored, but they were not inside. We have two questions. Oh, thank you. And so um, then we have sex workers or like prostitution, but sex workers, I think I like that better because it encompasses so many other things. Like burlesque performers are, or like strippers are also considered sex workers. So I think I like that term a lot better because it's a bit more of an umbrella, and it's definitely a vestia thing because it's more for entertainment as far as like burlesque and stripping. It's very sensual, it's sexual, but it is not meant to be like a forever thing. Like you get on stage, you do your thing, you do your job, you have some sort of money exchange for that, and then everybody goes about their night. The also pornography as well as celibacy is going to be linked back to Vesta as well. Fertility, oneselfness, the unmarried, personal focus, inner strength, self-discipline, health and nutrition all comes back to Virgo as well. So being more like self-disciplined and focused on mastering your craft. I always think about this in particular and pertaining to Vesta as like, for those of you that are more familiar with tarot, the Eight of Pentacles. Um, I think encompasses this beautifully because that card is all about mastering some sort of skill that's important to you. Um, and I think, that definitely lines up with what Vesta is all about. Health and nutrition, meditation, self-discipline, personal or discipline, Jesus Christ, per, disciplined personal routine, which is also going to be a Virgo thing. Um, So we would have fraternities and sororities, as well as magical and esoteric rituals, altars, locks, keys, and safes, as well as like just kind of like tradition. Um, so Natalia, I do believe there is a tarot class um, that is taught at DiviNation. I honestly could not tell you when it is in particular, but for right now, we're just going to stay focused on astrology. And so definitely that would be a great question to ask for the tarot class. All right, so any questions about Vesta before we move on? Go ahead, honey.
Um, can I ask a general question?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Is okay, I'm assuming numerology plays some how do I put this? How to put this? Sorry, I had the question
Oh,
in my
okay.
head, now it's completely disappeared.
No, it's okay. Take your time.
Okay.
I mean, I was like, are you trying to ask if numerology plays a part in astrology as well?
Yeah, kinda, specifically like the houses. And I was also wondering with that because is I remember tropical astrology is like Western astrology, which is different than European astrology, right? Because that's more like the Hellenistic type. And I would think the numerology would be closer with the Hellenistic because it's, for lack of a better way, logistically it's closer in countries. But I don't, so I was just curious if it played a part in tropical astrology.
Gotcha. So that's like a loaded question. So I mean,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. It's a good question. So European or Hellenistic astrology is just based on a timeline. So European astrology is going to be essentially the same as tropical astrology, or like Western astrology. It's more so Hellenistic is more the old way of thinking and doing things. Before we actually integrate like planets like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. That's what separates Hellenistic astrology from modern astrology. The big difference is going to be between Western and Eastern astrology. So, like Vedic astrology is very different than tropical astrology, totally different beasts. They have their similarities, but they are going to be a bit different, or not even a bit different, very different from how you interpret things. I think I'm not very well versed on Vedic astrology personally, but I think from what I've seen, like your moon sign and your sun sign like completely shift. Um, and it still makes sense in the grand scheme of it, but there are extra um, things taken into account, like the nodes hold a lot of weight the nodes of the moon hold a lot of weight in uh, in Vedic astrology, whereas they I won't say that they're not important in Western or tropical astrology. It just really depends on the astrologer you're asking. Um, it's more inconsistently important in Western astrology as to where in Vedic astrology it is a key part of chart interpretation in Vedic astrology. Um, and definitely the numerology, I assume I'm not again not very well versed on numerology, so I can only speak partially to this. I can definitely look it up and see if I can get you an answer for sure. But I all of this is like whether it be tarot, astrology, because even like the tarot cards um have astrological correspondences. So every tarot card is actually linked to an astrological placement, a unique astrological placement. Like, and some tarot cards will actually have the astrological placement that is linked to them. Like, I have a couple from a deck actually right on my desk. Um, like the Eight of Cups is linked to Saturn and Pisces. The Ten of Cups is linked to Mars and Pisces, and then like the Three of what is this? The Three of Pentacles is linked to Mars and Capricorn. So it's all linked, and so I imagine the same thing can be said for numerology and astrology and how like the houses are like came to be as well. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but it's the best that I got.
Oh, it's okay. That's great. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And may I make
Um,
one more observation?
yeah,
I find it funny that a lot of the asteroids, it seems like most of them so far are like, for lack of a better way to put it, female oriented, like
yeah.
with Vesta, Athena, and all that. But yet all of the major planets are mostly men.
Yeah, yeah. No, they definitely have to have their balance, their counterparts for sure. I was like, which is so disappointing that that the asteroids usually are not taken into consideration a lot, at least in Western astrology. I'm like again, like you'll see certain astrologers that will definitely take them into account more than others. But as a general rule, the asteroids are kind of an afterthought. And I think Chiron is getting more popular now, but and Lilith is getting more popular. But the rest of them, usually I don't come across a lot of people that are learning astrology that even know that the other ones exist. Um, Unless they've actually been to an astrologer for a reading and the astrologer brings it up. But yeah, no, definitely a good observation for sure. I love that. Okay, so we are no problem. We're gonna move on to, as we were talking about Chiron, we're gonna move on to Chiron. So Chiron is how you heal yourself, or how you are, or it's more like holistic knowledge. Think of Chiron as, I'm like, now that I don't know if anybody reads Lore Olympus, but now that every time like I think of Chiron, like in a actual like visual sense, I think of Chiron in Lore Olympus. um, as the psychologist, which I think really encompasses what Chiron is about, whether it be about a physical wound or an emotional internal wound that we have to heal. And so it's about how you heal yourself, and therefore how you can therefore heal others if you take the time to actually do the work and heal yourself first. And so we see the signs that lend their energy to Chiron being Virgo, Pisces, and Sagittarius. Let's kind of break that down. So Virgo is going to be, of course, about service. It's going to be about the small details of things. Pisces is about more so the big picture of everything. It's about the ending of something. Virgo is also about health, but Pisces is about, like, again, like I said, the big picture of everything. Not to say that Pisces is not focused on health, but it's more so focused on like maybe the health of like the group, and being able to be more compassionate. So what Virgo and Pisces have in common is wanting to bring uh, some sort of some sort of I don't want to say health. I'm lacking the words at the moment. Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. Um, they're bringing some sort of goodness or some sort of, yeah, service, I don't have a better word for it, to the general public, maybe for different reasons, but nonetheless it is meant to, at its best, it is meant to help someone that maybe is not in the best situation. um, Sagittarius is going to be the guru. It's about knowledge, but it's also like about hedonism a little bit. But it can be about expansiveness, especially expanding the mind as well, which is about like knowledge. It can also be a sign that's really more so about like long distance travel, or like different cultures and different ways of thinking about things. Um, and so we see quite a few things being kind of wrapped up in Chiron. So we see things like educators, healers, doctors, and medical workers. So I don't think it just has to be, me personally, I don't think it just has to be physicians. It can be nurses, because honestly, and this is my own personal opinion, nurses do quite a bit more than doctors do. Um, and so to me, nurses are wrapped into Chiron as well, because they play a main part in the diagnosis part. Doctors really just give the official diagnosis, but behind all of that is what everything that a nurse does. And so also mental health professionals. So like psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, all of those people are going to be very Chiron-centered people, because they're helping to heal some sort of internal wound within ourselves. And therefore, to do that work, a good psychiatrist or psychologist or counselor would take the time to also heal themselves. And we can also argue that maybe also many psychologists or psychiatrists, whatever, medical professionals do this through helping other people. They heal themselves through helping other people. So introspection to find answers or a cure. So this can be thought of as either physical or emotional or spiritual. So you can even think of like a spiritual like guru or a spiritual practitioner that maybe you have like private sessions with or whatever. Um, you can think of that as like a very Chiron like person. Um, but also we can see self-doubt, unrest, like all the nasty things that can come up. And if we do not take the time to give attention to where we are wounded internally, those things can also come up as like their more negative side, where is we start doubting ourselves, we start like doing the negative self-talk, not being able to sleep, which affects health overall, whether it be mental or physical. Overall reliance on authority. So not taking, and I think this is also coming more so from Pisces, not taking accountability for your own kind of personal power and over relying on what other people are telling you to do. So I say it comes from Pisces because Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and Neptune rules over like the hive mind. Um, and how we're all connected, and and we're all kind of like cosmically, mentally, and spiritually connected with others. um if we're just relying mostly on what somebody else is telling us to do without really thinking, without that Virgo part of looking at the small details and really trying to dissect what is really being said here, what are the facts, then that Jupiter energy between Pisces and Sagittarius is taking over a bit too much, and over reliance on authority is happening. um, Gurus as well as surgeons. So I was talking about this can also, Chiron can also be, looked at as physical as well. So if you have like a physical wound, surgeons or even surgery, you might need to be literally cut open to figure out what the problem is and to get a cure. So needing to remove like a tumor or something, very much a Chiron thing. When we talk about transits, I think Chiron will also be a nice one to look at as well. Especially like when you have like a Mars retrograde, depending on what house it's transiting in your chart, the certain transits with Chiron and Mars during a Mars retrograde might not be the best time for you to go into surgery. Um, Especially if they're making a hard aspect between each other. Mars retrogrades usually aren't the best for surgery anyway, but definitely if there is like some sort of Chiron Mars hard aspect, like a square or an opposition, probably want to wait on that surgery until, ideally, until Mars retrograde is over. But if you can't, just wait until the actual, what is that? The actual hard aspect between Chiron and Mars is over. So then we have the healer being more generous and abundant, all in the pursuit of knowledge. So generosity and abundance, let me make those their own bullet points. So generosity and abundance comes from an ability to uh, not live in fear of what you're lacking, because you feel more whole. But also the pursuit of knowledge is a big part of being able to feel that, because you're doing the actual spiritual work, which we can tie all into just healing in general. Oh wow, and we've gotten through all of the things. We did not talk about Lilith, but I do have I went through my library and found a couple references to Lilith in astrology, since I'm not very well versed on Lilith. We talked about Lilith earlier, but I also promised that if I could find a better resource, that I would give that to you guys. So the book that I'm getting this from, hold on, let me actually find the page. Uh, I should have bookmarked it. Ah, okay. So it's the Warriors. So it's going to be Lilith and Toro. We didn't talk about Toro. It's another minor asteroid or another asteroid in general, but it has a very similar energy to Lilith. And so the book that, let's make sure, the book that I'm using is Asteroid Goddesses by Demetra George. So a lot of what I am going to be referencing when we do get to the resources, to the actual resources, Jesus Christ, the not the resources episode. This is not an episode. Resources class, which will probably actually be today, will be Demetra George is a very well respected astrologer. Whether like she's a Hellenistic astrologer, but I think you can kind of take what she says in a lot of her books with and kind of like melt them into however you want to um, read charts. You can adapt. Like it's very like it's a bit flexible. And I think that's the beauty of astrology is that nothing is ever like a hard line. There are some like important rules, but so much of chart reading is interpretation. But Demetra George, very well respected astrologer, in a lot of the books that I have that I'll recommend, she has her name on. So this is by Demetra George and Douglas Block. And I think that that should be on the sheet. I think that this book is on the sheet. If not, then I'll add it on there. Oops. But for Lilith, um, so it was basically all the things that I was saying, but it does go into a bit of Lilith's mythology. And so I'm just going to read like a small part of what it says about Lilith as far as astrological chart interpretation. In chart analysis, a prominent Lilith displays the quality of personal independence and a refusal to submit to another or compromise one's beliefs, as well as the potential for resolution. Stressful placements of Lilith point to the perception of the feminine as evil, the vampire, potential rape or sexual abuse, especially when aspected to Toro or Saturn, or the inability to reach agreement until power issues are resolved. So we did talk about like that kind of Mars energy that comes out with Lilith as well last time. Lilith's aspects to planets depict how the contacted planet deals with the issue of conflict resolution. For example, Lilith Ceres aspects focuses on resolving conflict in family matters. Jupiter Lilith aspects contacts may involve religious beliefs, with Lilith Venus aspects focus on love and sex. In synastry, Lilith contacts signify the need for the individuals to learn negotiation as well as potential problems involving sexual fear, rejection, anger, or suspicion. Definitely a good book to pick up if you are interested in asteroids. I don't unfortunately have a good book as like to recommend if you're interested in fixed stars. But I will say that Google is free for sure, because that's what I do. I had taken one class in particular where they talked about like in-depth fixed stars. Um, but that's the only class that I have ever taken on it. So I don't feel comfortable like just going all in on that today. I'm still kind of creating my own class from what I know and what I've researched. But that's not done yet, so I'm not completely just comfortable talking about all of those today, but there are a lot of fixed stars that also, just like asteroids, contribute quite a bit to a birth chart, as well as interpretation for what somebody's future might look like based on those things. So we are going to move on. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen because we're gonna move on to, I think, the resources page. I can't believe we're almost done with this. And then we're gonna kind of go through chart interpretation. I think I'm going to save any questions while I find the next handout. Uh, you know what? Actually, no, we are not. I forgot that this was even in here. So we are going to talk about transits today. Um, I forgot that I added this in here. So we are going to talk about transits today and how to interpret them. So I'm going to open this up. Hold on. So I'll say also interpreting transits. So I always get this question is what is a transit? A transit is basically if you put your birth chart, like if you look at your birth chart and then you add in what's actually happening in real time. So real time planets are always transiting something. They're always communicating with each other. They're always communicating with your own chart. They are just moving. So because transit, I think, literally means movement, like moving or going from one place to another, I think. But we that is what a transit is. It's basically the current real-time planets mingling with your own chart and the things that come of that. And so let me share my screen here. Okay, we have a question. Do you know of a site that has these asteroids in a whole? So AstroSeek has them, but Astro.com has them as well. Astro.com, I think, has more of it, has like, if AstroSeek doesn't have them, then I'll type them in the chat. AstroSeek.com and Astro.
The one you told us to use before, I think it is AstroSeek. That's when you normally go to, right? Like when you pull up charts or that, like when we give you something. Yeah, that one I tried looking, I couldn't find where to add them except for Lilith and one other one. But so I didn't know if I was missing something or there was a different one that would be better.
Okay. Yeah, I know that there's somewhere, even in astro.com, you kind of have to look for it. Um, or you can like Google that like specifically, like asteroids, astro.com. And then it might take it to you, I think. Let me double check, but I know astro.com has them for sure. Because it has all the things. Let me see if I type in asteroids in natal chart. Okay, so it looks like the asteroids, um, yeah, when you go to actually put in your information in astro.com, there will be like all these extra tabs that you can click on. And one of those should have an option about asteroids. I would have to actually, we can do it together right now because so I'm not like just trying to like, describe to you one like a way to do it, and then when you're on your own, you're like, Micah said that this issue should be under this tab, but I don't see it. Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen and then share my whole screen. And,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Those sites can be a little confusing
Yeah,
if you're not used to them normally.
yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so that. go to horoscopes. Um, oops, that was what I was looking for. Okay. Okay, so go to extended chart selection. So I pressed on horoscopes and it did this drop down. So go to extended chart selection. Okay, well, it's gonna make me put stuff in. Hold on. Um, okay, yeah, okay. So I will just put in mine for the time being. And okay, so you put in information. And then it should take you to this. So it's going to be a round chart is what you're looking for. And then you would need to go to down to whole sign, which it should be here somewhere. No, I'm lying. Okay. So that is not how you do that. House system. There we go. Whole signs. Okay. So not the chart drawing style, but you need to drop down to like where it says zodiac and houses. Go down to whole sign, and then I think it would probably the asteroids would probably be under additional objects. Yep. And then under additional objects, you're gonna have all these things. So you have like all the different Liliths, and then all the asteroids. And the fun thing about this is that you can actually look up asteroids that aren't even on this one. So it gives you like a nice general amount of asteroids that we haven't even like are in fixed stars as well. But you can click on next to that, there's asteroids names and numbers, and it has literally 24,447 names of asteroids.
Wow.
And then also you have fixed stars as well. So if we clicked on this, it literally has all the ones. And so all of these are all the A's um, through like Y to Z. Um, and then you can also do fixed stars as well. And yeah, if you're looking for any specific one that we haven't talked about, I think like, thankfully the internet's like the great thing about it is that you can Google what would that actually look like. If you're unsure of maybe what kind of like a general idea of what um, a fixed star or a planet, or not planet, asteroid is about, I would say look at the mythology or like the story behind that planet or sorry, not planet, asteroid or star. What is it like, just like kind of like a general mythology behind it? Because that's really all we're doing when we look at asteroids, and even in with planets as well. We're taking some of the mythology, pulling from that some more like, I guess, more abstract spiritual meanings of those things, and making interpretations about a chart based on those planetary positions. But yes, this is how you would find the asteroids. I knew it was not straightforward, but I just wanted to, yeah, kind of walk through it, because you can also do on not AstroSeek, on astro.com. Yeah, I think you can do this on AstroSeek too. Is you can put in, uh, you can do astrocartography. And I know I'm getting on such a tangent at the moment, but that's okay. Because I think we have a pretty good idea, at least, honey, you have a pretty good idea of how to read natal charts. Reading transits is almost like the same thing. You're just putting it more in like a this is going to happen in the future, or this might happen in the future. It's just like a small tweak. Um, and so let's look at location. So astral click travel is how you would look at astrocartography. And so this is my chart basically mapped out over the world.
Не
And so,
засыпает, он там спит еще. Ну, еще.
Natalia, did you have a question? Okay. Um, okay. And so, yeah, so we have all of these lines are essentially my chart laid out over the whole world. So visiting all of these different places would, oh, no problem. So visiting, so let's say I was looking for somewhere to visit for a vacation. And I didn't want any kind of, um, and I just wanted to have fun. I'm not looking to hear from anybody. I just want to go like completely ghost from people, right? You would probably want to look at, for astrocartography, you need to look at the chart on its own first, not just this. Because I could say in general, you would want to maybe go to, if you're just looking to kind of disappear from people, then you would want to ideally look at like your Neptune line. But if your Neptune in your chart is aspected, say with like, what planet would warrant no isolation? Maybe like Venus, like a square, like if that Neptune has like a square to Venus or something like that, then going to your Neptune line might not give you like that desired isolation that you're looking for. You need to look at what the planets are saying on their own in your chart, and then taking that and putting that into your actual astrocartography line. And then you would need to look at what's called a relocation chart if you're trying to actually move there. If you're just going for a vacation, I think like the first two steps are fine. But if you're actually trying to like move somewhere and you just want to start completely over and just go missing from all your friends and family, maybe then that would maybe that might be the line for you to move on to. Because you can actually also zoom in on all of this. I always forget how to zoom in on these. There we go. So if you wanted to like stay in the United States, you can click on harmonious aspects, which is going to give you all the lines that in your chart don't have like any super hard aspects on them. So for mine personally, Pluto and my ascendant are very happy together. So my Pluto line in my 11th house to my first house might be a line that I could go to if I'm trying to network with people. Since my Pluto is in my 11th, and if I'm trying to go for like business or meet new people for networking and things like that. Going to, believe it or not, going to like Omaha might be a good idea, or like going to, what is this? This can't be like Manhattan in New York, because that's too far over. What is that? Manhattan, Kansas. Ironically, that might be the place. But also like going up more near like St. Paul, Minnesota. And so, so we would also look at all of this and take all of this into consideration when looking at like if you're just like moving anywhere. Mercury lines are notorious for you being busy, or just getting lots of texts, emails, calls while you're traveling as well. Again, you would need to look at your chart in particular, but the planets will planet no matter how they're aspecting your chart. Your chart will just give more details about how that might go, how that subject might go. So Mercury is always going to be about talking and communication. So maybe you don't get lots of calls on your way to like a vacation destination or even while you're at a vacation destination, but you're constantly having to talk to the concierge, or you have like a very busy itinerary while you're on your vacation or something like that. That is a very Mercury line kind of thing. Um,
So wherever the lines intersect, that's what you like look up the two signs in your chart and that's what it would be.
mhm,
Like Nevada, the Mars, and I can't read what that green is. I think it's Venus. So like
mhm,
that would be a good place for like to make partnership connections,
mhm.
but are like in a very rough way,
Yeah, so
like
it could be like
forceful.
it could be like very creative. Since the Mars trying the midheaven would be good for work. Um, but it can also be like, so it's like a lot of work, a lot of play, ironically, since Nevada is where Las Vegas is. But this looks like they're intersecting at, doesn't look like they're actually intersecting over Las Vegas. Um, and there's give also with like um I have no like clue what any of this is. Anyway, interesting. So it's not just like this, like say this is a desert. Obviously, it's not going to happen in the middle of a desert. So there's a specific range of like miles, like to the east or west, where these things are a bit more potent. Um, and so I would say Nevada could be good. Las Vegas might be a little bit too much out of that range, so I would probably look, I don't know, even what major city. Usually, I mean, it doesn't always have to be a major city either. Sometimes it's just a podunk town, but it can be a place where just a lot of work can be done. I'm very interesting to a lot of people, or I'm just very attractive to a lot of people, um, whether that be physical or like just very charming. And so I bring in a lot of people, like maybe possibly for work, um, or I meet a lot of creative people that I end up working with. Um, I don't know what that would mean. Ironically, Nevada is somewhere I really don't ever want to visit.
I get that. Too hot and too sandy.
Too hot, too sandy, and I am a massive introvert, and so like all the like I've been to Nevada before, but I'm just kind of like I think I was because I was near Las Vegas, and I just did not like it. It wasn't my scene at all, but I did go there for work. Um, it was actually with a private I was a nanny at the time, and so it was to take care of someone else, which I guess technically would be that Venus line. So I was in a care position or like a nurturer position, but I was making bank. I was making a lot of money while I was there, which would also be that Venus line. um but it was just a very, like you were, I think, honey, like you were saying, it was like in a very rough way. The job ended up ending because I had uh, a because me and my employer had very different ideas on child rearing. And she was gone half the time. Anyway, that's beside the point. um, and so it was not a very pretty, it wasn't an ugly break in a business partnership. It was very subdued, which I think is that nice Venus softening Mars aspect, but it definitely was not amicable. There was friction, which I think with Venus and Mars, there's always that friction, even if they're in a good space together. But this is also where I would say, again, like go back to your chart, because right in between my own Mars and my own Venus is Saturn, which would be that very non-explosive but very subtle um, tension that's happening between the two planets. We have a question. How did I decide to study tarot? That why I'm trying to think back. Why did I decide to study tarot? Because it honestly, to be fair, I just decided to study tarot because it was something that was readily accessible, and I was still learning astrology. There was no particular reason that I can pinpoint that I decided to study tarot in general. I just decided to study it because it was something that I think every person that takes like on a path of like witchcraft or anything kind of like generally eventually studies anyway. Um, and it was readily accessible. When I started my own journey, I didn't have a lot of vision about where I was going. I just knew that I loved astrology. And because astrology was not something that I already knew about, memorizing things, and since I'm a third house sun, I was really good at memorizing things. And so cards were easy to memorize, but also it was something I can make money off of. And so, to be honest, it was just kind of something that was readily accessible. It was I guess, technically easy enough skill for me to develop, and it was something that I can make money off of. So that's why I think I started tarot. I'll be the first to say that tarot is not my preferred divination tool. Definitely astrology is my my preferred divination tool for sure. Which is ironic because I've been told by lots of people that I'm great at tarot, and that a lot of people see me doing tarot professionally as more of a focus, and I'm like, absolutely, absolutely not. No, like it's just not my personal thing. Um, Gotcha. But yeah, that's just my personal thing. But okay, so that we're gonna kind of get back on track now to transits. So transits, like I said, are going to be the same um, as interpreting a chart, but instead of thinking about it so personal to the actual person, you're thinking about it as this is a potential event that could happen because of this transit. So like say like someone has like Mars square Venus in their planet, and not in their planet, in their chart natally, we would say that relationships with others might be a bit tense. So all you're doing with a transit is saying that during this time, relationships may be more tense. That's literally all you're doing because transits are temporary. It's not something that is embedded in your actual like being. It's just something that's happening. Like we were saying, transits are temporary. So the effects of that transit are just going to be a prediction of what you might be experiencing during that time. And this is why I say I think like one of our first actual homework assignments was to follow the moon. It was like maybe if not the first one, then it was one of the first homework assignments. Or I don't see now, I'm like, it's been so long that don't even remember if I ever gave that assignment. I think I did. um, and
Yeah,
so,
you did.
okay, I was like, it's usually like one of the first things I ask. And so you are, because I'm like, that is transit interpretation, is following the moon, because the moon moves the fastest. Out of all the planets, it's going to move the fastest. Um, so what is the moon in right now? Um, let's see. The moon currently is in Leo at this time. So it comes as no surprise to me that I spent last night dancing when the moon ingressed into Leo. It was for a project that I'm doing, or a performance that I have coming up in February. But either way, dancing and drama and like more theatrical performance arts is very much a Leo thing, but it's also my eighth house. And so part of what I do outside of like my 9 to 5 job, outside of this job, is to perform, whether it be like aerial arts or burlesque. This particular one was burlesque. Leo is my eighth house, so the moon was transiting my eighth house. So the dance that I was doing at home yesterday was in the movement were a bit more sexual, which is eighth house. And so they were a bit more sensual. And so we can also take that a step further. And we're gonna go back and break all this down about why I'm interpreting it this way. My eighth house is linked to my sun because Leo is my eighth house. And so my sun is in Pisces in the third house. And so the third house is going to be like movement, but it's going to be sensual movement since the eighth house and the third house are now linked through the sun. But the moon is also transiting the eighth house, which would make the actual event happen. It's triggering both the third and the eighth house. And so I'm going to stop there because I could make more interpretations about that, but we're just going to stop there. So we're going to start with the sun, and then we'll come back around to the moon. But I'm just stressing the importance of transits of the moon and how they affect us from day to day, because we can always see that. Of course. Okay, so we have sun transits. So sun transits are going to be a bit more general. I've written all this down, of course, on here, and it should be available on the website. If it's not on the website, let me know, and I'll send this to Alex as soon as I send the asteroids handout, the updated asteroids handout tonight. The sun transits are a bit more general usually. We don't notice them as much because it's just kind of affecting the general energy of the time. So like you'll usually see this when I'm trying to think. So Scorpio season, it's spooky season, right? True. People are getting ready to hunker down and because it's starting to get cold, everything's dying. People are taking more time to go inward and inside the house as well because it's getting colder. But also we see maybe a lot of I'm not very well, and I'm going to sound so old when I'm saying this, but I think it's called like, what is it, cuffing season? I think technically it starts somewhere in Scorpio season, like basically where you like pick a person to like hunker down with consistently until the summer, until the summer happens to hook up with. All that's happening during Scorpio season is that not, it's sexual. But depending on where the sun is transiting in your own chart, that would also play a part as well. But we see a marked difference between the months, what everybody is focused on. So maybe during Scorpio season, you see a lot more people focus on either connection with other people, intimacy, or credit is another thing that we might see, like focus on credit or paying back loans is another thing you might see people very focused on during Scorpio season. People are a bit more intense during Scorpio season, whereas in Sagittarius, you're coming out of spooky season and going into like Thanksgiving, where you see expansiveness, like that Jupiter expansiveness, and going into like Christmas time, where you see like all the stores really focusing on getting you to spend money. There's a very marked difference between the two. And all of those have their own kind of thing. Because in Scorpio season, you see things a bit more subtle, a bit more subdued, a bit more repressed. But when you go into Jupiter season, that's when you see people like, and I'm saying this also like because I work in customer service for a 9 to 5. People start getting a little bit more crazy, like after Scorpio season, because it's Sagittarius season. It's Jupiter. It's very in Jupiter, like the sun is in a Jupiter ruled sign. And so it's about spending money. It's about that expansiveness. If you take expansiveness and just being in a good mood and all that, you can almost relate it to like almost like this very like Dionysus or like Bacchus kind of energy where things just kind of can easily spiral into madness. That doesn't happen in Scorpio season, but it does happen in Sagittarius season, and it's not a coincidence that that happens. And so we can see that, we can attribute that to anything. Even in like Aries season is very different from what we see like in Virgo season. Aries season, you know, it's starting to get warm. People are a bit more energetic. They are starting to come out a little bit more. They're getting new ideas or, you know, a bit more self-focused. Whereas in Virgo season, people might be more willing to help others, or the people around you might be more willing to assist you with certain things, like getting things cleaned up in your house, or really focusing in on checks and balances when it comes to financing or accounting or things like that. So it's general energy is what we're seeing with sun transits in particular. Again, the sun on its own is general energy as well as health, vitality. So it's again your energy level as well, which would encompass your health and vitality. It can also be men. The sun rules over men in general, whereas the moon is going to rule over women in general. These can be reversed depending on the person's chart, but in general, that's what we attribute each to. Authority figures, regardless of sex, are going to be ruled by the sun, as well as creativity as well. So you can also think about this as like the sun card in the tarot is about like usually all these things. Maybe not the men part, but like, you know, creativity, vitality, victory, really feeling, you know, like things are going your way, or, you know, just feeling very energetic, which maybe allows you to get certain things done, get certain things achieved, all of that. The moon is going to emphasize everything, such as like change, where the sun is more constant. The moon is going to represent change because again, the sun doesn't move as quickly as the moon does. He stays in the same sign for 30 days ish. And we see with the moon moves signs every 2.5 days. And so we can see the moon on its own represents family, home life, what happens kind of behind closed doors, your roots, as well as like the past, unconscious motives. It's going to be your habits as well. It's going to be the moon, how you need nurture or what you need to nurture at that time, or what needs nurturing. Oh, I forgot to mention this for the sun. So when the sun is transiting a planet, whether it be another transiting planet or a planet in your own chart, it's going to illuminate that thing. So let's say like the sun was opposing the sun in your fourth house was a transiting sun in your fourth house was opposing Mars in your 10th house. The sun in that particular transit is going to be illuminating some sort of tension, maybe with a boss. It's going to be some sort of power struggle because the sun is already about authority figures in general. And that opposition is going to be a hard aspect. And so the sun is just lighting up that opposition even more. If the tension that maybe you were having with your boss was didn't peak prior to this, during that transit, it might just peak. Like everything's might just be amped up a bit more because the sun is giving its light to that particular tension with Mars in the 10th. Or maybe you just might be more busy Maybe because we also have to take into account if the sun in this example is transiting the fourth house, then the sun is also illuminating your fourth house. And so there might be some issues with work-life balance in particular with this example, because the sun is illuminating the fourth house. It says that the fourth house or the domestic life becomes very important. It becomes a focus. But with the opposition of Mars, it says that work life is also important, and maybe you're getting a lot of pressure from an authority figure at work, or you're needing to get something done at work, and needing to balance those two things becomes a bit more intense during this transit. So kind of circling back to the moon, because I wrote it for the moon, but I didn't write it for the sun. When the moon is transiting a natal planet, the transit moon will emphasize that natal planet and how it's changing or changes with that. It creates instability. So like if the moon is if your moon is conjuncting like your Venus or something, like a transit moon is conjuncting your Venus, maybe I won't say that you lose a friend during that time or you lose a relationship during that time. It depends, because you have to look at what else is going on during that time and what other planets are kind of talking at that time. But it could say that maybe you have a friend that is a conjunction isn't a hard aspect. So if the transit moon is crossing over like your Venus or something, what I would say is that maybe you are really having to be there for a female friend or for a mother, or I do need a bit more nurturing from a friend that's a woman, or you need a bit more attention from a mother figure. It could also say that you're spending a bit more time beautifying your home as well. So it's, I say instability, maybe instability is the wrong word, because it's not something you're constantly focused on for the whole like 30 days. It's going to be like, oh, this is like a project or something that I need in the moment. But it's not always going to stay that way. Something that might, like with hard aspects to the moon, I think those bring a bit more instability rather than softer aspects with the moon. So like a square to the moon with Mars is going to cause like maybe some sort of emotional fight, rather than like a square to Venus. Moon square of Venus, any kind of like Venus squares usually are not bad. And we'll talk about this more when we talk about Venus. But I'm just going to say this right now. Hard aspects to Venus usually don't, in general, they're usually not bad, because Venus is already about harmony. And so what I usually see with clients and myself is that with hard aspects to Venus, usually you spend more money or you overindulge. And yes, that's negative, but it's also not. Like, I guess it depends on what you consider as negative. Maybe you have the funds to overspend, must be nice. But overindulging in like things like food or comforts or things like that, those can be bad for your health. Um, and so those are like the kind of, I guess, like negative things that will come from hard aspects with Venus. But like to going back to the moon, moon square Venus in particular can definitely be about women, but it can be about like what you need nurtured. Maybe what I see the most is I guess like the worst thing coming from that is that you're not as focused on maybe what other people need. You're more so focused on, it's a very one-sided kind of focus on nurturing. So maybe either you're too focused on what you need other people to nurture you for, or you are so focused on nurturing somebody else that you don't focus on your own stuff. But yeah, so the moon can also talk about change of mood. So like if you have moon in Aquarius, maybe you're feeling a bit more anxious that day. Rather than the moon being in Taurus, is going to be a lot more laid back, because of the moon being in a Saturn ruled sign, traditionally Saturn ruled sign, rather than it being in a Venus ruled sign, where actually the moon is exalted in Taurus, as we've learned. And so the moon is comfortable there. So it's a very different kind of energy as far as general mood of things. This, again, you would need to look at your own chart and where it's, how the transiting moon is kind of talking to other planets in your chart to really get a good idea of how it affects you individually. But this is the general thing. Mercury transits aren't usually noticed either because it's more just about like talking with other people. Unless you get some sort of explosive kind of transit. And I don't necessarily consider like Mars Mercury transits explosive. I think more drastic Mercury transits could be like Mercury Pluto or like Mercury Uranus. Those are a bit more shocking. And we really haven't integrated a lot of the outer planets into our class or this course. But I would say that those two might be the ones that are a bit more dramatic, are Pluto and Uranus to Mercury. But usually in particular, I'd say Uranus to Mercury to the moon, because those three planets together, if not in a harmonious aspect, can cause some sort of mental distress. Since the moon is already just very changeable, it's not as constant or stable. Mercury is already about mental facilities and what's your thought process on things. Uranus is just kind of everywhere, and so it causes anxiety. It causes a lot of stress, and it just usually I've not seen, if those aren't well aspected, that it's just not fun. But those are the more dramatic, I guess, Mercury transits. But Mercury transits in general are usually missed because it's just about talking to other people. What are our own ideas? And what do we bring up maybe to other people? But it can be like a shift of focus as well. So like Mercury in Capricorn might be very work focused, but Mercury in Libra could be more about facilitating or going to like networking events, or really creating relationships with people, rather than just like the work part of it. So maybe with Mercury and Capricorn, you're staying overtime at work, and getting stuff done and getting all these projects done over like after hours. But if Mercury is in Venus, or not Mercury is in Venus, if Mercury is in Libra, you're more focused on actually sorry, my dog made a weird noise. But if Mercury is in Libra, you're maybe more inclined to go to the company party, or to make connections with new people, or to just go out in general because you want to talk to other people. Whereas Mercury in Capricorn is not looking to talk to other people. It's trying to get stuff done. It's trying to make all the contracts and things like that, and push those out. So it's a shift in focus. It could be about like just how busy you are. It could be about like what kind of correspondences or like mail you're getting. Short trips, and it just also just makes you busy on a day-to-day thing. And so that's why they're also easily missed, or not as like they're not as noticeable. It's just because it has so much to do with our day-to-day life. Venus transits, those create harmony, indulgence, and pleasure. So with Venus, we usually do notice those, because it has to do with like harmony with other people. So it's no longer just about talking to other people or like what you're thinking on your own. It's about harmony, but it's also about your money as well, what you're spending money on, what money is coming in, what's coming out. And those are the things that we do notice usually. But they're usually easygoing transits. They're about social relationships, attracting things to you, money coming to you, money spent. They can encourage indulgence, laziness, or entitlement as well. We kind of already talked about Venus. Before I go any further, does anybody have any questions about transits so far? Oh, I did include Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto transits. Okay. Go ahead, honey.
Not really a question. I just want to let you know that the transits sheet here is not on the website either.
Okay, I'll send this to Alex as well. Thank you. Okay, so then we have Mars transits. Mars is going to be not just about aggression or about the work you're getting done, or the work you're trying to do. It's also about like the power that you maybe want to assert. So maybe a really good Mars transit at its best can have you taking on more of a leadership role. Rather than like a Venus transit that might make you want to really just partner up with people, create harmony, and be, I guess, not in like, I'm not trying to say this is all negative, but be more in like a follower kind of role. But Mars transits are going to be more so about leadership, and this is how you're actually like, going about things. And so when we have Mars transits, Mars also energizes whatever it touches as well. It's about our instincts and those basic needs needing to be met and needing to find what is, find the resources that you need to get those basic needs met. So you're just very action oriented during Mars transit at its best if Mars is well placed. So like Mars in Aries is going to be more prone to speaking up for itself, being an advocate for itself, being that leader. Whereas Mars in Pisces is going to be, it's not going to really talk as much. It's not going to be that leader, and it might not get as much work done. Mars in Aries, just because it's more competitive and a Mars ruled sign, it's going to maybe really get like those things checked off the to-do list, because it's got lots of energy to do those things. Whereas in Mars and Pisces, it's tired. It's literally tired. And so it's not as assertive. So we have leadership, competitiveness, conflict and aggression with yourself or with others, and kind of like the me versus environment kind of thing when you're seeing Mars transits, as well as ego really comes up more during Mars transits. You'll always find at the center of Mars transits is your ego. And so, or someone's ego. And so that is going to be Mars. And you would really just take all of what I'm saying again. You would look at it as if if you had this natally, how would it be interpreted? And then you just switch that interpretation from a more personal standpoint to this is temporary. And so then we have Jupiter transits, which expand and are a bit more general, but they last a bit longer since Jupiter is slower to move. So Mars transits will last for maybe about a week and a half, as well as Venus transits will maybe like last, I think, like a week. Mercury transits are relatively quick. Moon transits, like I said, will happen, will usually be done like within hours. And so hours, if not, until it moves into the next sign in 2.5 days, depending on where the planet is in your chart that the transit moon is aspecting. So Jupiter, you'll experience those for a bit longer. So you might experience those for maybe like I think like 2 weeks or so. But it expands on things. And that can be either good or or positive or negative. Um, but it can also be about since Jupiter is about your belief system, it can have you reassessing what you believe about not just like spirituality, but just kind of how you go through your day-to-day life, like like the big overall big picture concepts. So like I'm gonna keep going back to work, but like so like is maybe like a positive Jupiter um, transit has you looking at work life as maybe prior to the transit you're like, oh, work is really important, and I definitely want to sorry, my dog was like chewing on something again. Okay, sorry. Anyway, maybe prior to a Jupiter transit, you're like, work is really important, but I'm not trying to excel, and like get promoted or anything. I'm fine just being content. What we maybe with a Jupiter transit to the right planet like Mars, like your whole reasoning changes and you're like, well, I see the bigger picture now. I want to be able to make this much money because because maybe I want to buy a house, and I'm only able to buy a house if I'm able to rise up the ranks or get a raise. And so the belief system is now switching to something completely different in regards to work, or the reasoning is switching in regards to work. Like or the thought process. And maybe I think like a more intense Jupiter would be like, it's not just important because of these goals, because that's also like very much Saturn is like the long-term goals, and this is why I'm doing this because for the long term. But it'd be like, well, I used to be very content with just staying in this one job, but this serves like a higher purpose. I'm like, I have the example in my head. I can't find the words for it at the moment. But it's going to be like something in the general idea of this is good for, I just keep thinking of like environmental things, but like this is something that brings me happiness, this brings me passion. And this affects so many other different parts of my life that I didn't realize before. And so therefore the beliefs, like the beliefs are changing a bit about how maybe you're looking at the general concept of work. I'm describing it very poorly at the moment. But it's more of a big picture kind of thing that happens with the belief system, even with something as small as work, or as big as kind of like the spiritual perspective of things. Um, it can also expand the body. Jupiter over the first house, transiting over the first house is notorious for having people put on weight. Um, you're aware of going overboard or getting greedy with Jupiter transits as well as being overly generous. Not every Jupiter transit is good. Like we were saying, even though it's benefic, it doesn't always do good things. It does usually, but not always. Saturn transits are going to restrict and focus and have you focusing on the long term. Um, so whenever Saturn lands, wherever Saturn lands is where we need to pay attention, a special attention to, because it's making those things of that area of our life harder, so that we can work on it and improve it, and so that at the end of the Saturn transit, we come out better for it. And then at the end of every Saturn transit, usually, as long as we've done the work, there is some sort of gift that Saturn leaves. So it could be something like a promotion or like a new house or a new relationship that's more stable, solid, healthy, because maybe your ideas about or like self-esteem has improved during the Saturn transit. So like we said with Jupiter, not all Jupiter transits are positive, not all Saturn transits are bad. They're hard, but they're not all bad. Stop, please. The it brings challenges and setbacks. Um, Saturn transits, I feel like I kind of just think of like rolling a huge boulder up a mountain and constantly have it like losing your grip on that boulder many times. It's hard work. Um, but definitely if the work is done, then Saturn transits can really pay off a lot. Um, and you feel Saturn transits again a bit longer than you do Jupiter, since Jupiter moves signs every year, but Saturn moves signs every 2.5 to 3 years. Um, and so you're going to feel those transits in particular a bit heavier. The closer that Saturn gets to a personal planet, you'll start to see like little nuggets of what the Saturn transit will be about, just like with all of these planets, except for maybe the moon and the sun. You'll start to see like little hints right before the Saturn perfects, which a transit perfecting just means that it's in like that 2-degree orb of the personal planet. And so we would count perfecting as if your natal Mercury is at 18 degrees and Saturn is at 16 degrees, it is perfecting. It becomes exact at 18, but it is basically there. But you'll start to see little tidbits of what the Saturn transit will be about a bit prior to that. The closer that it gets, the more intense things get. But definitely, yeah, that's good to note as well, because it's not like it just kind of comes out of nowhere. So then you have Uranus transits that are really expect the unexpected. It's a lot of fluctuation, a lot of instability. It can be about mental health as well. It's more so it's not always negative because we have to also remember that Uranus is about being innovative and creative as well. It's the higher vibration of Mercury. And so it's not always negative. It really depends on how well you do with change at a drop of the hat, which is a work in progress for, I think, everybody. But some people do respond to sudden change a bit better than others. And so, yeah, I think for those particular people, those are going to be the people that already have a very strong Uranus influence in their chart in general. Neptune transits, a lot of confusion, a lot of smoke screens. They don't always make things super clear, but they can also connect you to the divine. So having prophetic dreams or just feeling a bit extra sensitive to other people's energy and a bit more psychic can be another thing that Neptune transits bring. The Neptune transits you feel for years. Because I had Neptune conjunct my sun for 3 years. It's like 2.5, 3 years. Before it got far enough away from my sun that things cleared up. Once things did clear up, I had some sort of vision about where I wanted to go with my life. But during that 2 to 3 years, nothing, absolutely nothing. And so, but it also depends on what the actual transit is, because it's not always going to be a conjunction. Sometimes it's a square, sometimes it's an opposition, but there's always going to be that general idea of fogginess, being a bit more tapped into the unseen rather than the actual reality of the situation. Being victimized or being a martyr, bad things happen. And whether this is for the greater good of things or not, it really depends on the transit and what aspects Neptune is making. Creativity, development, and psychic activity or psychic abilities can also be really honed in during Neptune transits. Pluto transits, radical transformation. Pluto transits can also be about what do you owe somebody else, or not just like with money either. It can be like what do you owe in more of like a either karmic sense, because Pluto is karmic as well as Saturn. Those are like the karmic teachers, I feel like. All the outer planets I think are, but Pluto and Saturn I think are a bit more intense than the others. And because they're a bit more extreme. Um, Pluto is going to be where something needs to die off, or in order for it to change, or it just completely kills something off completely. It's where death happens in order for space to be prepared for new beginnings. Where fears are exposed, I think Pluto transits can also be really good for seeing mental health professionals or like for introspection if you're not able to access mental health professionals, just like for introspection as well. It's about opening things up, is what Pluto is about. It's like getting down to getting underneath what is being seen on the surface and bring it up to the surface to be able to deal with it. So think of like digging back up a grave is essentially what Pluto transits do. Things that you buried is going to bring them back up, and they're probably going to be rotting and they really smelly, but it's time to deal with them. Is essentially what Pluto transits are famous for, and why they're usually not the most fun, but they're also very rewarding as long as you do the work. Because a lot of transformation comes from that. Control and dominance also comes from that, as well as people just being a bit more intense and harder to deal with, can come up as well. So, any questions about transits? And we'll do, I think we only have like 15 minutes left, and we'll do a little bit of practice. And then we'll be all done for today. Or we can, if you don't have any questions, because honey, you're the only one in here now.
Yeah.
So we can actually go to the resources list if needed. Also, because I'm like, I think that's the only thing that's left.
Can you scroll down a little bit on this page so I can see the
Oh.
homework so I can take a picture of it?
Sure, yeah. All right. Oh, this was the follow the moon one.
Oh.
We can do that over because I think when I first gave this particular homework, we didn't have all the knowledge that we hadn't gone through the whole course. And so we could still do this one and put in the aspects, houses. So everything that you basically know now, just add the transits in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And I got that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So actually, I want to save the resources one for next time because I know probably a lot of people will want to know books. I will save that for next time. So go to the astro theme. And we will go to, we'll just go to where things are at right now before we add in any kind of other charts. So let me share the screen. Okay, so we have Moon currently in Leo, so it ingressed into Leo yesterday. I should also mention, so you feel the energy most at its most when a planet shifts into another sign. So like 0 degrees of whatever sign, and also 29 degrees of a sign are going to be where that sign's energy for that planet will be most intense. That's when you'll see like almost the epitome of that sign's energy being expressed through that planet. So I would say to, just also kind of keep that in mind, like kind of as you're continuing to learn astrology. And if something isn't readily apparent why things are happening, I would say check and see if there's a planet that's about to leave one sign and go into another, because that can also be the culprit a lot of the time. But okay, so we have Moon in Leo, Sun in Sagittarius. Actually, we have not a, I guess not a cazimi going on. A cazimi is just another word basically for a conjunction. But I mean, there's a more drawn out definition of it, but for the purpose of today, since we only have like 15 minutes left, we'll just say it's basically a conjunction. And Mercury is actually at 1 degree of Capricorn right now. But yeah, so I don't know if you have a chart that you want to use, honey, whether it be your own or Shane's. We can kind of look at some of the transits that might be coming up for either one of you.
Right. I'm learning I am can't really biased for my own, so use Shane's.
Okay. Let's see. Let me go back here. Who's that? Wait, where is the? There it is. Okay. Okay, and then remind me birth date.
April 9th, 1998.
April 9th, 1998.
At 7:30. Oh, sorry.
There it is. At 7:30 in the morning?
Yeah, PM.
PM.
Night.
And then city?
Toronto, Ontario.
Okay, so I will do a bit of a demo. Let's blow this up a little bit. Okay, so Shane's chart is in the middle here, and then these are all the transiting planets. Usually you'll also be able to see, usually it'll actually tell you which is which. On this, it actually doesn't. But I can tell you that since we already looked at the transits for real time right now, the outer circle is going to be what's happening right now, and then the inner circle is going to be Shane's chart, since of course it has the ascendant on there. But so we will actually, he has a transit coming up with his Venus. His chart ruler is moving from his first house into his second. I do believe that's happening on Monday. So what he could probably expect is one, possibly more money coming in or more resources, or things might go a bit smoother with either paying things off, like paying off credit cards or being able to pay certain, debts off, since it is Scorpio. But I'd also say there might also be more of an inclination to overindulge in spending as well. And so you might just want to watch that. I'm looking at where Mars is at. Mars is also about to move. So eventually he'll have a opposition between the transit Venus. Well, I guess he has it now. sort of. But eventually, yeah, he'll have an opposition between the transit Venus and his natal Mars. Um, wait, no. I'm reading it completely wrong because that Mars is in, I don't know why I read that as being in Taurus and it's in Aries. Um, so he has that going on right now, which would just be some stress with relationships and other people, and maybe how he's being perceived by partners. Uh, yeah, but I'd say the one that's coming up. So just because Venus is leaving the first house, um, things might settle down a bit because that opposition will no longer be present. But I would say they'll probably um, clear up like what any if any sort of like relationship issues are happening right now, they probably would clear up closer to like that second week of December. You got to give Venus enough time to actually clear that opposition completely. Um, but I'd say yeah, that would probably be when he might start to see more resources come in, but also he just wants to watch his spending. Um, Especially if he's giving to other people. It might not necessarily be about credit. It might just be about how generous he is with gift giving, and can he actually afford it. I say that because Venus is moving into the second house, but the ruler of the second house is his seventh house in Aries, and so it's relating to what possessions of his is he giving to other people. Since it's the Christmas season, I just say, yeah, watch spending as far as Christmas gifts and make sure he's budgeting. Um, yeah, I think that is the gist of that transit. But it does look good for money coming in though, because the transit Venus, it will be as soon as it moves into Scorpio, it'll be trine his own Venus in Pisces, um, which will be nice because since in whole sign the Pisces would be his sixth house. So maybe if not some sort of bonus, like Christmas bonus or something coming in from work, maybe just some sort of extra job or extra opportunity for money to come in or resources to come in might be coming up as well. Since there's a trine between the second house and the sixth house. Um, Another way we can interpret this is there's a lot of focus on servicing other people or being there for other people. But I also imagine that things aren't fun right now for him at work since Saturn is transiting his sixth and therefore restricting his Venus. Um, shush, Benny, stop barking. I imagine things aren't super fun right now, and like there might be some restriction or like a boss maybe being a bit more intense at work, or just work becoming very stressful. Um, uh,
Can it just be work, or can it also be just like regular, like not necessarily
it
work,
could
but like
be
his day-to-day life? Not,
it could be day-to-day life since the sixth house is also your daily routines.
okay.
So it might just be like he's just very busy as well. I'm trying to look at what else might be either changing soon. Everything else looks like it's almost in the middle of its transit. I mean, other than the moon, of course. The moon will be moving into Virgo into his 12th house. So some sort of ending might be coming up with a partnership, possibly. Only because there's an in conjunction between Virgo and his seventh house, which is where Mercury is, the ruler of the 12th house, is in the 7th house retrograde. So either somebody is coming back up from the past, maybe somebody that's long distance, or there is some sort of like partnership ending that's coming, and he might not be able to have seen it coming. Yeah. So I'm like, what else is ruled by Mercury? Mercury is also, I think it's about somebody from less long distance, since we have Gemini, with Mercury in the 7th also uh, being the ruler of the 9th house, which is about like different cultures, beliefs, and long distance, like people at a distance. And 12th house is also about like at a distance things. So I'm wondering if like some sort of partner or some sort of job opportunity, or somebody from an old job comes back up or shows back up. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Where are you getting that it's from like a past?
Because Mercury is about to go retrograde. So I would say it's the past, but also he has Mercury retrograde in natally. Um, so I don't think whatever is coming up would be hard, but also I say that because the 12th house is about usually things we don't see coming. And so in the present, we usually see those things, for what they are. But because we have Mercury, the ruler of the 12th, about to go retrograde, that's why I say it might be about more so the past rather than people that are currently there right now. Some sort of like communication might be coming back up um, from like a past partner that's at a distance. That's why I'm saying that.
Okay. Now, what about Pluto? It looks like it's close to going into the fourth house. Would that
Yeah, so Pluto won't be fully moving into Aquarius until 2024. I forget what month, but I think it's like March. I
Oh,
think
okay.
um I want to say it's in March, but it'll go into the 4th house. So Pluto rules over the second. And so there's some sort of change that'll be happening, having to do with resources, comforts, um, partners, and the home life situation. I say partners because the ruler of the second, the traditional ruler of the second, is in the 7th. But Pluto would be transiting the 4th. And so we're bringing in not only the 7th house parts and the 2nd house parts, but also the 4th house parts with Pluto. And so you have to look at what does Pluto rule over, and then mesh all what houses is Pluto ruling over, and then mesh all of that with where Pluto actually is or where it's moving. Um, and so for that reason, I say whenever Pluto does move into Aquarius, during that time, there might be a lot of either moving in and out with partners, or maybe like co-living, meshing his resources with, or meshing their resources with other people. Um, and I don't think it's all negative. I think that it'll just probably serve a purpose. And if changes happen, I don't know, just kind of like taking a brief look at his chart, how uh good he is with change. I would expect, not horrible with change with all these cardinal placements, but so I don't see any real fixed placements. Yeah, I'd say other than maybe like Uranus and Neptune, I'd say, if I had to guess, I'd say that he's not awful with change. But I think that there'll be very transactional changes happening with like, okay, I have a certain goal, maybe like to move out of state or something like that. So in order to do that, I have to cut expenses. So maybe I have to move in with a friend for this amount of time until I get this amount of money saved, and then I would have to move again. That I would expect probably like during the time that Pluto is moving through his fourth house. There might also just be a lot of stress when it comes to home life, when it comes to family as well, because Pluto will eventually cross over his Neptune, which will be about some sort of letting go, whether it will physically be of like some sort of job or breakup, because it's the sixth house, or some sort of death of like how he navigates his day life. I only say the job and breakup because since Pluto is death, but Neptune is endings, and so I don't see it being something as light as like just uh changing his routine. I think this is a bit more drastic. So I could say that maybe probably this is about leaving a job. Maybe the fourth house has to do with death anyway. And so I don't like to say it, but I'm like potentially a family member passing, or it can be just like the change of a relationship with a family member. So like that relationship dies. Um, and then eventually it'll pass over, like, not now because it'll have to retrograde and then it'll go back over his Neptune. But eventually it'll also cross over his Uranus as well. And Uranus rules over Uranus is already in one of its home signs, and so it can be about like communication with family, or contracts maybe when it comes to real estate, sudden changes that happen in regards to that as well. Yeah, that's what I would be getting from that. Because Saturn's just going to keep going through the sixth house. Until 2025. More like into 2026, because I think it actually goes into, so I want to say with Saturn in Pisces, it actually is spending closer to, like, it's like just shy of a month, like it's just shy of 3 years, like by like it's like 1 month off. um so he's going to be experiencing that for a good part of 2024 and 2025, for a good part of 2025. So the next like 2 years, Saturn will be really moving through those through those two houses. So a lot of big changes. Um, I would say he would probably want to focus on, because Jupiter will eventually be moving into his ninth. As cheesy as this is going to sound, I would say prayer, meditation are going to be really important, since Jupiter will be moving into Gemini. Movement as well, travel, having some time and space to just kind of go alone to places. I mean, I guess with Gemini it can also be like with a partner, like with one other person, but having time away, and to also journal would be something good for him, because I'm not going to lie, that Saturn and Pluto transit happening at the same time is going to be stressful, even if it is just about work. Um, it's I imagine that those would be stressful for anybody. But since Jupiter will be soon moving from the eighth house into the ninth, um, yeah, I'd say that really deep introspection is important for kind of helping to get through this time. Um, yeah, because yeah, I think that's kind of like the saving grace here. Or not saving grace, I don't mean to make it sound like ominous, but it is stress. Those two are stressful, and I think that'll be a really good outlet. So like movement, travel, even if it's only like a road trip, like over the weekend, or like just walking every day, improving health can be really good. Um, Working out, I suppose, since Mercury also rules over the 12th. And it's Virgo, so finding like more holistic, maybe going like through plant medicine or learning more about plant medicine could be good since Virgo is about like plants and herbalism. And it could relate back to the ninth. Um, and so like more like detoxing, purifying the body to be able to kind of refocus the belief system on like through all of this stuff might be a really good option as well. Or even teaching, I think, could be good. Anything where he's able to learn but also talk. So because it's Gemini, there needs to be some sort of aspect of quietness, but also talking as well and movement. And then Virgo is service. So I think of also teaching other people maybe what you've learned after you've learned the thing and you're incorporating it. Yeah, that is what I've got. We've run out of time, but take take time to do the homework, and then when we come back next time, you can share what you have. And I have to talk to Alex because I do have other things that I can teach, but I was trying to save until like the next course, but since we still have the resource list, I'll probably just like maybe add in like a bit of a teaser into the next course to kind of transition into, or into the next class to tease into, or to transition into the next course. But any questions before we end for tonight?
Um, I don't think so. Just how long should I follow the um chart cycle? Just like a week or
Yeah, I'd say do, because I'm like Venus will be moving into Scorpio this week. And also what else is moving? Yeah, just do it for a week because I'm not one to tell you to do it for a month because I know I would struggle with that. But do it for I think at least a week. I wouldn't say anything under that because I'm like you'll probably just get a whole bunch of moon transits. And I do want you to get like at least some really good, like at least one good planetary transit. And I know that Venus is moving into Scorpio um on Monday. And so yeah, it's
okay.
a week.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Also, how much of a chance will there be a class again this month? And I'm not asking to push for it. I'm asking to maybe it not be this month.
Oh, gotcha.
I just know with like Christmas, I know not everyone celebrates, but even like with Yule, a lot of stress and everything happens this time of year. And I know I'm super busy with getting
Yeah.
house prepared and everything and gifts. So
So what I can say is that the class is scheduled already for not this next week, but the week after that. But
oh, okay, never
based
mind
on the
then.
schedule, it should be a Facebook Live class. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so I know that those are a bit more popular because everybody can kind of just set their phone down, especially since I don't have visuals that I usually have in Zoom. Um, I like Zoom because I can give the visuals, but so Facebook Lives are good for like, like you said, if you're not able to be completely present, then you can at least just listen as you're doing things.
True.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Oh,
right.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. I will hopefully see you in the Facebook Live class.
Yep, sure will.
All right. Have a great couple weeks or until I see you next time.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So
Bye.
see you then. Bye.